Is this thing on?
Is it live or is it Memorex?
What is Memorex?
Yeah, not everybody will get that reference. So this is like, there's some Western where it's like, there. Is it live or is it Memorex?
I guess it's live. What is Memorex?
There's a Western where it's like 1, 2, 3, go. And then they're like, well, are we going on 3 or are we going on 1, 2, 3, go?
Yeah.
So we were just told count to 15 after the go live command.
And then it said 3, 2, 1.
Then it says, 3, 2, 1. So it's very confusing. So we're so sorry we're running late. Not Jimmy and my fault. Not the fault of Jimmy and I. The tech side of this wasn't provided to us on time. So here we are.
Can you see? Can we see ourselves online?
Do you need to see you?
Oh, no, I just see. Okay, there we are. Hi.
I am very pleased to have Jimmy DiResta in the shop today. And he's actually been here all week long. And we shot a lot of video. You're going to see that on WWGOA in a little bit.
We had a good week.
Give your background to the folks at home, as I mentioned once earlier, you know, in case somebody's been living under a rock and they don't know who you is.
Yep, I've been a maker my whole life. I've been making things since I was in primary school, elementary school. I've been making things with my dad in my dad's shop, which is similar to this. I grew up in a wood shop and spent about 25 years in Manhattan building things in Manhattan, building things in the basement of a building, then moved upstate about 7 or 8 years ago, full-time. I kind of overlapped many years between upstate and New York. And now I have a farmhouse upstate New York. I have a big shop that I rent down the street, one in my backyard. And I primarily do custom built-ins, sometimes for interior designers, but lately in the last several years, mostly just YouTube content. So all the things I build are for myself. Pretty much mostly everything I build is just to satisfy content creation.
Look at your YouTube stuff. You have a couple subscribers on your YouTube channel.
Couple. I have 1.95 million.
Couple million
subscribers. 1.95. So I'm about, I guess, 50,000 away from a million. I think. I forget the numbers.
And then tell us the other.
500 away. I forget.
The other thing that is crazy cool and very fun to watch is the Netflix show.
We have a fun Netflix show filmed in the shop, but that's built on my property. We built that in the last 5 years. That is a really fun show where me and 4 other YouTubers build fun, wacky stuff. Kids pitch us their fantasy ideas, and then we go and we build them. And it's a lot of fun.
It's so much fun. You have to watch it.
It's a little oddball of a show, and I play a little bit of a grumpy character, which is just TV BS, but it's fun.
It's very fun to watch. So a couple little like bookkeeping, office keeping things. We are doing a sweepstakes and we're giving away some DiResta branded stuff.
Yep.
So an ice pick and a knife combo, and the knife also comes with this poster. And sometime tonight, Jimmy is going to sign the poster. Great. Thank you, Vanna. And then the knife is in here, and I'm intentionally not opening it, so that the recipient gets an unopened package when they win this. But if you scroll down just a little bit, you're going to see a thing that says sweepstakes.
Yep.
And that's what this is all about.
So I famously once on a podcast said, if it looks straight, it is straight. And I was talking about when I would do installs in New York City in old beat up pre-war buildings.
Where nothing is straight.
And nothing is straight. And the clients would say, is that straight? And I go, does it look straight? And they go, well, it looks straight, but is it straight? Like, did you put a level on it? I go, well, if it looks straight, it is straight. And this was a dumb joke. And then
you print these.
And I print these, yeah. And so when I very first restored my very first antique printing press, I couldn't think of anything to print. So I had previously said this stupid comment. And so I said, let me just make a poster of that. And that became my best-selling poster. So that's why that's the significance of that.
The knives in that package are cool. And then you're well known for these ice picks.
Yep.
I own one. So we have one. I don't want to open those either because I don't want my thumbprints all over it. But that's a very cool thing.
These are ice picks that I've been making. These are the little ones. We make longer ones and shorter ones. And this is a shorter one. And it's a pocket everyday ice pick that you carry in your pocket so that you can pick your teeth, get the last olive out of the jar or the pickle, or pick a lock, or
no.
What? Only do wholesome things with this. Pick a lock that you lost the key to that you own.
All right. If I were to pose a question, would
Yeah.
you answer it? So we are aware there are going to be a lot of questions because Jimmy's here today, and so we're going to try to move even faster than I normally do.
I'm gonna clean my fingernails. I didn't take one on the plane with me. So
Questions unanswered.
I'm gonna clean my fingernails with this.
All right. Bill asks, love the shows. Would like to know is there a type of beeswax / shellac formula that can be used as a stain or top coat? Or do they need to be used in separate steps? Is this in your wheelhouse?
Well, I'll tell you what I do. I would trust your answer over mine, but I tend to find things that I trust and go with, and I use brie wax or bry wax. A lot of people call it bry wax. There is a black bry wax, a dark brown, and a clear. And with either the dark brown or the black, it'll stain and wax simultaneously. And what I like about that is if you're going to have an old country farm table look, if you like that, which is most of my type of work, if it starts to wear and the wood shines through and you don't like that, you can put more back on and you could apply.
Forever rejuvenatable.
Yeah, as opposed to say a polyurethane finish, which might get chalky if it's exposed to sun. And I like a wax finish on natural wood because it tends to look already worn in.
Yeah, and I'm not. And finishing always kind of hangs me up because I'm so afraid I'm going to provide bad information and thereby ruin the project somebody's got bazillions of hours in. I'm not aware of a beeswax shellac combo. I think there are some oils out there that have beeswax mixed into them. But my guess would be, so one, do a little more research because you're not really getting the answer you want out of us. Two, my guess would be, I don't think you could have shellac and beeswax in the same, like you could oil and beeswax, because they're not.
You could shellac buff with like 000 and then beeswax on
beeswax over the top. I think that would be the way.
That's how I would do it. When I say 000 steel wool can give you like a nice sheen or maybe 600 grit.
Brian simply states, stoked that Jimmy is here in the backyard or is in my neck of the woods in Plymouth, Minnesota, which is about 50 miles.
Oh, right on.
East of here.
Shout out to Minnesota.
Or west of here.
I feel like I'm in a movie because everybody has the same voice as Fargo around here. It's crazy.
Do I have a Minnesota accent?
A little bit.
Well, I grew up in Chicago.
You have that deep voice. You sound like a radio announcer. But
people around here, they'll say right away, like, oh, I can tell you're from Chicago, and I've lived up here 41 or more.
I could hear Chicago and Minnesota in some of the things you say.
On a chisel or a plane iron, do you recommend a micro bevel when sharpening?
Yes, I use the MK2 system from Lee Valley, and it is incredible because you can keep a blade as clean and precise as the day you buy it, as long as you keep matching the bevels that it came with. And if you have a catastrophe, like you might drop it or get a chip in it or nick a nail, you can bring it back to life just following the same bevel. So that is the system by which it looks like a record player, and you have the 3mm plate or the 2mm plate or whatever they are, but one is just a little bit thinner that gives you the micro bevel. And that, once I found that system, I threw away all my sharpening stones.
And I think micro bevel lets you bring an edge back faster and gives you a little bit keener, a little pointier edge for fine work.
And what I always do, and I even made this, they don't sell it, at least not that I'm aware of now, but this is 10 years ago when I first bought it. Am I saying it right? Is it the MK2 system?
I don't know. It's one I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, it looks like a record player, and it's just a sanding disc.
Would you like to Google that on your phone?
Yeah, it's on Lee Valley's sharpening system.
Krista's on the shop, so we can use it.
I think it's the MK2 system, but I made a little disc of leather so I could strop the blade. So while it's spinning, while it's still in the apparatus, it holds it at the correct angle, your correct bevel angle. I could strop it or just take it over to the buffing wheel. Anytime I sharpen, I showed you that today, I always do my last finishing with a sharpening stone, a bevel, a buffing wheel. Couldn't get that out. A buffing wheel with some rouge on it, and that gives it that fine, super slick, super razor blade sharp feeling that I love.
Ken's other question is, are drum sanders susceptible to creating snipe?
I used yours for the first time this week. I never had a drum. Is yours a drum sander?
Yep.
Yeah. I didn't see any snipe on the drum sander, only if it gets stalled, but that's to be expected. But as long as it keeps moving, and even on I never get snipe on my lunchbox
Planer?
Do you know why?
No.
I always have a sacrificial piece
Chasing it,
chasing it.
leading and chasing.
Yeah. And the snipe will always be on the piece that you throw in front and pick up and back. And you'll never have a problem. Just always throw in a piece of scrap with it. Or, 2 long rails beside it. There's a couple of tricks that I never get sniped. If I'm conscientiously trying not to get it, I will not get it. If I'm being haphazard and I'm making up boards that are going to become part of some rustic table, I'm usually not overly concerned.
Did you find it? Mm-hmm. And it is the
MK2.
MK2.
Oh, MK2 sharpening system from Lee Valley. It's a bit pricey, but if you don't like whetstones and you have a hard time keeping a straight bevel exactly perpendicular to your sides, which I found when you have that rolling thing, that little rolling bracket one in a whetstone, I found that my stone was kind of wearing out unevenly, and that was a little frustrating. And the way this system works is you have a 4 millimeter plate, and you do it'll hold your bevel, and you get it nice and clean and how you want it, and then you change it out for a higher grit and a thinner plate, and then it just kicks down. That gives you your micro bevel.
Geometry changes.
Yeah.
So you don't change the manner in which you hold the chisel.
Your plate just is thinner. And yeah, it's a really great system. Yeah.
And I would go back on the drum sanders and say, like any tool, it's going to depend on how you set it up.
Mm-hmm.
But in my experience with many different models of Supermax sanders and even time savers on a big scale, I don't think I've ever seen snipe on a sander nowhere near as prevalent as it is.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the only snipe I saw is when it stalled because we took too big of a bite.
Yeah.
And then you just throw it through 2 more times and that's gone.
Yep. Okay.
But the drum sander was something, the minute we played with it, I said I've been wanting to get one of these. I never did get my hands on one, but I think I am going to actively look for one because the pieces, it was nice. We threw somewhat rough lumber through the planer, took it out, threw it through the sander a couple times, and it looked like it was beautifully milled wood.
Well, and we only took, so I've got a dual drum Supermax. We were running 80 grit on the front drum and then 120 on the back. So the effect of that is you get a rough pass and a cleanup pass in one.
That's really wild.
And we could have gone as high as 240 on the back drum if we wanted to. There's kind of a point of diminishing returns on feed speed because the finer the grit, the slower you got to go.
Yeah.
So I find if I drum sand to 120 or 150, then picking up on the project with a random orbit sander.
Then we use, what was it, 220 on the Merca? Is that what he said? Merca?
Yep, Merca. Yep.
And it looked like glass. After my little tricky hand sanding thing that we did,
Yep.
which you'll see in the video.
Yeah. A rule of thumb for domino use, does it have to be a certain size for each thickness? So I think they're looking for how big a domino relative to the material.
Yeah, I would personally not go too much thinner than the domino itself. But I have.
Which one? Because there's
the standard one, the first one.
10 millimeter. I think. So I think 10 millimeters is about 3/8 of an inch.
Yeah.
And I think that size. So here's a way to think about this.
Yeah.
If you're doing mortise and tenon joinery, a pretty standard rule of thumb for that is the tenon should be 1/3 the thickness of the rail.
Yeah.
1/3 the thickness of the part you're going to cut the tenon into, not the mortise.
So you have 1, 2, 3, top, middle, bottom, and the middle is the tenon, and the top and bottom is either side of the mortise. And that tends to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I have gone thinner, but I haven't been in a situation where it's like the leg of a chair. The leg of a chair, I'd keep as much meat around it as possible. But if you're just joining boards, you could potentially, and it has happened where if you go with the tight domino cut and you hammer it in and then you clamp it together, the glue has nowhere to go except shoot up out of the surface. That's what you're subject to, is squirting glue through the grain up out of the surface.
Because you're too big a domino, you don't have enough skin left around it.
Right, so it just squirts up through if you're using a fat domino and a thin piece of wood. So that is what you're susceptible to while you're assembling it. One way to avoid that is if you have fat dominoes and thin wood, keep cutting a wider hole so the glue can come back out and go into the joint, not necessarily escape the only way it has to, which is up and out of the surface.
But I think if you think in those terms, in terms of about 1/3 the thickness for the domino choice, that's going to get you pretty close.
Yeah, that's how I go.
that one we did. Brian says, better to remove a contractor table saw and make a table to house it, or leave it and try to figure out the dust collection underneath. Worried about tool integrity when you start mounting it in a station. So I think, the contractor saw with the open base.
I would leave it. I would leave it at the job site and buy a new saw.
Did you hear that?
I'm joking. I said I would leave it at the job site and buy a new saw. Contractor saws.
Contractor have it.
Yeah. Contractor saws are obviously a good entry level saw, but as long as you can quickly afford to get out of that category, I would go. But I've seen some incredible work done on a contractor saw. Great Tamara 3x3 Customs. It's unbelievable what she's done over the last several years with a contractor saw. I mean, you have no excuse after seeing what she's been able to do.
If it's what you have, it's what you have.
Right.
And they are infamously horrible with dust collection because of the way
just a box.
It's just so open. Yeah.
You could build a box. You could just build a box and just put a tube on that closed in box and make sure it's going to pull everything from any of the cavities around the table.
I don't think putting it on a plywood base is going to cost you a good plywood base is going to cost you any integrity compared to just being on the 4 steel legs it would normally be on. I think as long as you do a good job building the plywood base, you'd be okay. And if that then provides you a way to house the opening on the back, that's the weak point, is that big opening on the back. Then you could increase.
I think
improve your dust collection.
The most important thing with a contractor saw, if you're going to be using that, is make sure that it's fastened down. If you're going to push a big board, even if it's like a heavy plank for a series of table glue ups, or if it's a sheet of plywood or even half a sheet of plywood, you don't want to tip the table over while you're pushing.
That would be bad.
Or when you get through the other side, you want to make sure you have a good outfeed table. But most importantly is if you have a contractor saw that has metal legs, make sure you could at least put a couple screws in the ground so that it stays put.
Because they have no weight.
That's the problem. There's no girth to them at all. There's no gravitas, and you'll tip them right over. So it's really important to make sure they're fastened. I think that's more important and safer than worrying about the dust collection right now. But I guess if you're going to put a dust collection system, all that integral will keep it solid.
Jacques asks, this is a good question for you. Do you have a preferred size when creating box joints?
I like the look of just the width of the saw blade. I think that looks cool. So when I'm doing small stuff, I recently made I call it the Starrett toolbox, the Starrett machinist box, and all the drawers were, not much higher than 2 to 3 inches. And that looks cool with a bunch of little tiny cigar box.
1/8 inch kind of.
Yeah, the width of the saw blade.
Finger.
Yeah. I like that a lot. So that's when I'm doing smaller stuff. But if I was going to do bigger stuff, like you saw today, like we did today on our special project, I like to do a pleasingly divided up look. Sometimes like a little like an inch. It depends on how thick the material wall is versus how high it is.
You kind of accidentally ended up with fingers about as high as the material is thick.
Yeah,
which could be an interesting kind of rule of thumb to start with.
Yeah, that looks nice. That's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
But you don't want to end up on like a half wonky thing. So you have to break up your space so you end up with an even amount.
This is
or at least a fair amount that look the same.
Because you drew the finger joint out on your laptop, but that wasn't in SketchUp. Where did you?
I used Illustrator. We had a 10-inch space, top to bottom, and so what I did is I drew just a regular box, and I just copied and pasted it all beside each other. I didn't care, but I did 10 of them, and then I shrunk them evenly to fit inside the 10-inch, and I looked at them, and I'm like, okay, that's a little too fat. And then I took one out, and then I spread them out a little bit. It looked too busy, I meant to say. And then I took one out, and that still looked pleasing. That looked more pleasing than having 10 at 1 inch. So they ended up being like 1.17 to be precise.
So where I was going with that is you can't beat mocking something up before you're going to cut wood. And whether it's an Illustrator, I use SketchUp all the time, or it's as simple as a piece of cardboard in your shop, and you draw it to scale, and then you draw 3/8 fingers, 1/2 inch fingers, 3/4 inch fingers. Then you start to see what
a good sharp divider is nice too.
You're yanking my chain now because my divider wasn't sharp.
I think he uses it to pry open 2 paint cans at once.
All right, before you're back, I will sharpen my divider. I'm not sure what this is about. Brian says, small shop could be good to add router and storage. So it's like a statement. I don't know. Another Brian, or the same Brian, thoughts on minimum dust collection, air clearing in a basement shop?
I say, especially if you're in a confined space, based on my own personal experience, I think it's really important to have a vacuum that you could put at each machine, at least the best you possibly can. I know chop saws don't really do well at collecting sawdust. They just basically create a cloud. But if you can contain that cloud by building a box around it so that at least some suction goes into a funnel-like box, that's cool. You know, I had, remind me, you reminded me that I had in my basement shop in the city, we basically built a plastic tent around my chop saw. So you kind of had to move a little bit of plastic to get at it, and it self-contained everything. Wasn't the best solution. It wasn't having like a 6-inch tub sucking from the back of it, but everything kind of stayed in that cloud and fell into a garbage can behind it.
And I think because he mentions air cleaning, so in the world of air filters, the companies that make them, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but when you look at an air filter, it'll say it's capable of some number, 1,500
micron
cubic feet per minute.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going after the CFM.
Yeah.
So then you can calculate for your shop, if your shop is 10 by 10 with an 8-foot ceiling, 10 by 10, that's 800 cubic feet. So let's say a 1,600 cubic feet per minute air exchanger would roll that over every 30 seconds. You'd be refreshing it. So where I'm going with this is the companies that make air cleaners can give you advice on, you should size the air cleaner based on the cubic feet of air, and because they want you to circulate, they want you to refresh the air so many times per hour, right, in order to make sure that you have fresh air, and that's how you size the cleaner. A quick fix, at least to get started, is to get a little box fan and a Filtrete filter from 3M and just wire it right to the side of the intake, and it's probably better than nothing, or if you have a couple of those. John says, George, is your mic turned on? Because there's a lot of echo, but no one else is. Maybe my mic. Is my mic on? Hang on. You're blue, I'm red. Is that good? I'm going to go again. I might have hit a button when I shoved it in my pocket. Now I'm blue. I mean, I'm not blue like I'm sad, but my mic is blue. I know what you meant. Okay. Thanks, John. So yes, was that my mic was a little bit kerflooey, I think. Jimmy, started watching Making Fun, which is the show you referenced earlier. Thank you. When I saw the notice was Q&A, love it. What do you do with an 8-foot taco spitting dinosaur after it's completed? So let me background this, and then you can answer the question. Sure. So on Making Fun, it's crazy cool. What happens is they open a segment with kids saying, I want a Tyrannosaurus that spits out tacos and farts bubbles, or whatever it is. I want a bicycle. I'm referencing the ones that I've watched. So the kids come up with these kind of crazy ideas, and the scale of the stuff, like I want a guitar that can be used as a boat. Yeah, we did. So it's an acoustic guitar that's like bigger than this workbench. So now show is done. It's a great question. Where's the stuff? It's in storage right near the house. That's a true story. It's in storage right up the road from my house because it was just a close, like as soon as we finish an episode, we start interviewing the kids for the next episode, and the background team would be dragging that up the driveway, bringing it down the road to the storage unit. And everything's there. We have a contract with the storage unit till the end of July. So unless we end up doing a season 2, everything's in there. The office, all the stuff, all the administrative stuff is all in that storage place. Because the dinosaur, the taco dinosaur, was large. 12 feet tall, 11.5 because we had a 12-foot door. So everything was just under, if it was upright, it was just under the height of the door. So, everything's in storage. And ultimately, if the show does not go anywhere from here, I'm not sure what's going to happen with everything, but maybe we'll donate it to a kids museum or something, or we'll give everything to somebody to start a mini golf course. That would be cool. Got 8 holes started. Cindy asks, changing out tires on an 18-inch bandsaw seems like brute effort. Pretty certain the size is correct, but a challenge to get on. Any tips or tricks? Getting the tires on, soapy water, or just regular dish soap. and then you got to like get it started, get a couple spring clamps there.
or
Yeah.
somebody hold it. You need
And
four
then
hands.
pull a dowel or a screwdriver around a bunch of times, because then that like relaxes the stretch
Yeah, that's true.
so that it becomes uniform.
Yeah.
But we're really simplifying, we're making the process sound simpler than it actually is.
Yeah, two C clamps would probably be helpful.
Dean asks, what's the best sandwich you like to eat after a hard day's work in the shop?
I usually go for the Italian mix over at Stewart's, and then I throw the bread away and the lettuce and the tomatoes, and I just eat the cold cuts. That's usually what I do.
Okay.
Stewart's is an upstate New York thing.
Do you enjoy the creative process, I'm guessing this is for you, more than the finished product, or do you enjoy the accomplishment of finishing the product?
I honestly, I find joy in all of it. It's really nice to finish something, especially when it's a stressful one. So I'll be happy when that's done and past me. But the process of learning, for instance, lately I've been learning pottery. I really enjoy that. The process of learning how to use clay in a new manner. Blacksmithing, I love the process and then focusing in the finish. Because if you've ever done blacksmithing, it's like you're basically finding an image in this hardened piece of metal that's nearly impossible to manipulate and move around. So in the process, you're learning, oh, if I hit it here, it'll do what I want over there. And if I hit it there, it's going to pull back over here. And then you slowly start to focus in that image. And the whole thing is just really, really rewarding. You know, as a maker, it's nice to quite literally hammer out an image.
And it's kind of like the creative side, you have a dream. And on the build side, your dream is coming true.
Yeah.
Which both are equally cool.
Yeah. But it is exciting to finish a project that you hate. That's the best part. And those come along every once in a while.
True.
Especially the pay ones are the ones you begin to hate the most. The ones you get paid a lot of money for.
Herbert asks, what tools or calculations do you recommend when cutting angles for creating trim for octagonal shapes? So I think let's not get hung up on octagonal, because that's eight-sided is always going to be the same angle every time. But when it's not a rectangle or a square, it's not a 45-degree cut.
Well, there are a couple of preset tools you could buy. There's that one that has the pins. I forget what that's called.
Miter set.
Yeah, the miter set. And in the miter set, there's two pins and you put them at the angle that you want and you set the miter set to that, and that gives you what you need. And then you can cut a scrap piece of material from that miter set up, and then you could use that as your guide. And
if you got to be smarter than the box is the problem.
Yeah, here it is. This is a great tool. I have one of these.
So this one is this has got angle markings on it, not what you just described. But I'll get there.
What this is telling you is, so that one tells you the amount of sides.
Correct.
Yeah. So this will tell you. So you put the 10. Oh, you go to 0 and you put it at 10. That gives you 10 degrees, and so on and so on. But here, this gives you the degree of
I pinned you at 8 because it's an octagonal question.
So here, these are all preset. So you put your what is this?
Miter gauge bar.
Miter gauge. See, these are one of the things that I never knew the name of.
Yes,
I just grabbed. Give me that thing. I just called that thing for 30 years.
I've learned that in the last 3 days.
Give me that thing. And you put your miter gauge bar in here, and this is the bar that goes in the slot on the table saw. And if you put it at 8 and 8, you tee it up against that, tighten it, and that gives you 8 sides of a frame.
Automatically gives you the right angle.
You can go up to 20 if you go to 20 and 20, right there. That doesn't even look like an angle.
Or 0 and 20.
Oh, never mind. 0 and 20, that gives you 20 sides.
So so the miter set's pretty cool. And then calculating is just how many sides. It's 360 degrees divided by the number of sides, right? And that's what gives you the degrees to which you cut that.
Right. And
that tells you the angle of the two parts.
But what side of the angle? The outside or the inside? The obtuse or the acute?
No.
Just get one of these. It solves all the problems.
Give me that thing.
And then I always, if I had to do something like that, I would always cut a bunch of scraps and see how it looks.
What's the most important principle in dust collection?
Not breathing in the dust.
Yeah. Dust collection is a very complicated thing, and it's another question that we get, GOA gets pretty commonly.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to answer because it takes a lot of research. Different tools have different CFM requirements, and then hard pipe versus like the second you go to hose instead of hard pipe, then your airflow drops like exponentially because it's corrugated, and then 4-inch versus 6-inch. So I don't know that, kind of the most important thing is talk to somebody who knows what they're doing, because it's very difficult to calculate good dust collection.
I'm not good at dust collection. I'm horrible at it.
You suck at it?
I suck at it. And in my big shop, in my big barn, I designed it so that it has a big breezeway down the middle. And I try and not to create, I have vacuums at each machine, but if the room gets a little bit dusty, I open up both doors and just
That's a great dust collector.
A leaf blower, and I just kick up the dust on a windy day and it'll just get sucked out into the woods.
I want to do this. I want to get these signed so we don't run out of time. So we're about halfway through. We'll run a little long because we ended up forced to start a little late. So we'll extend a little bit at the end. So again, here's what's happening. WWGOA is doing a sweepstakes. A winner is going to get a knife, an ice pick, and a poster, and then another winner is going to get the same. On top of that, Jimmy is going to sign these posters. Are you happy with your felt tip, or I can get you a pen? Or are you good with that? Or
this is a fatty. I've already signed them, but I could sign them again and say
maybe if because you signed and dated that other stuff, maybe that would make it like. Then we know it's today.
I'll use a little thinner pen then, so I'm not staying through. So I'll sign and date. Should I do a WGA special?
Sure.
WGA? Is it WGA?
Yep. Have you not been here the last 3 days?
WGGA?
WWGOA. WWGOA. Go up. So if they want to frame it, leave them room for a frame.
WWGOA.
Or don't listen to me.
I go in the corner. I'm sorry.
So for those of you that want to enter in the sweepstakes, just scroll down a little bit below the chat roll. You're going to see a bar, and it says, I'm looking at it right now, DiResta, that's him, tools, giveaway, enter to win. Click on that, and then you can get included in the sweepstakes.
Is it the 21st?
No say. Yes.
It is.
Of April.
So I put WGOA, thank you, Jimmy DiResta and George V. I signed your name for you.
Thank you.
April 21st.
Don't put that on any checks. Times 2. So these are, again, sweepstakes prizes. Vote early, vote often, as we say when I lived in Chicago. All right, I'm going to, this is another great question because this is another cool thing. Oh, wait. I lost my place a little bit. Here we go. We did the dust collection one. Bruce is bringing up the drum sanders again, asking about the model with 2 drums. It's just a 25, Supermax 25-2.
Supermax 25-2.
Or it might be 25X2, 25x2.
It might be a 25x2.
Krista asks your top 5 woodworking tips for beginning woodworkers.
Let's see. Find somebody to copy their work. Find somebody that you really admire and try and mimic their work. I mean, if you're a beginner, for the beginner woodworker, I'd say that somebody's keeping count. Emulate and copy somebody you like. Always keep a clean shop.
So it's a little bit like, it's not like I was laughing at the idea, but it's like painters used to like pick another painter and they'd copy Picasso to learn to paint as well as Picasso. So it's a similar concept.
Yeah, keep a clean shop. Make sure you always have a project in the beginning, like building a boat or a canoe or building a table for a specific area in your house. It's important to focus on a project because then you'll be able to encounter and experience various tools that you'll need throughout that. That's more important, having a project, than knowing the tools. You start out with a certain set of tools, and as you work through that project, you realize you might need another tool to do this, or you need a hand plane, or you need a shoulder plane, and so you have to go buy a shoulder plane. You start to develop the experience and the necessary problem solving, and you realize what you need as you go. So having a project, I think, is most important. So that's 3 tips.
You want to come back to that?
Getting around. Clean shop, copy people, always have a project.
watch really cool woodworking videos
Watch
on YouTube.
and experiment. Don't take a beautiful piece of Purple Heart and immediately go, oh, that's not what I meant to do. Experiment in plywood or an MDF joints. If you're going to set up a dado cut, experiment with a couple pieces of scrap wood before you go throw in your $200 piece of paddock in there or something.
It's a thing I harp on people when I'm teaching all the time, which is you wouldn't just pick up a guitar and go sit in front of people and expect to play if you've never played before.
100%. I use the example of the violin.
Yeah. And it's like, but in woodworking, we feel like if I buy a dovetail jig, I can cut dovetails.
Yeah.
Well, no, you can't. You still got to learn how to do this stuff.
And with dovetail jigs, there's a million subtle adjustments.
And I think a lot of woodworkers are learning to do this stuff on Christmas morning when they're trying to finish the gift for Christmas Day. Right. And that's not the way. You gotta go out and just do stuff for the sake of doing stuff. Yeah. I'm learning blacksmithing right now. Yeah. And the stuff I just put one of my first projects in the dumpster because it was crappy. So you just gotta do it for the sake of doing it.
Simply just getting your mind around what you need to do.
Yep.
What to do.
Practice. It's like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall?
Practice.
Practice, practice, practice.
Go up 7th Avenue.
Brian says boiling bandsaw tires seems to work. This is
I didn't know that.
From outside source. So maybe research that a little bit. Makes sense if you heat them up, they might expand better. Tips or practices when using a glue line rip saw blade.
Glue line rip saw? I don't even know what that is.
Well, it's typically like a 40 tooth or so alternate top bevel blade, and its promise is to have such a good edge on a board you rip on the table saw, you don't need to joint that edge.
Oh.
And I don't use them a lot, but I've used them, and I just treat it like a rip blade. I mean, make sure your fence is parallel to the blade to optimize your cut quality.
Right.
And other than that, it's a rip blade.
Yeah. If I was gonna, I often will join boards for a tabletop that come right off of the saw blade. If I can get a nice tight enough squeeze, you're not going to see any discrepancy.
If the saw is well set up and you're using a good blade,
yeah,
you can get a crazy cool surface finish.
You don't need to take every board over to the joiner.
Charles asks, is there any chance of the USA ever adopting the metric system?
I don't mind the metric system. A lot of people, there's always a big up and down fight about it. I just find the working in thousands is something that's a language I've developed in the last several years. I showed this earlier in a tip we talked about. My ruler always has 1/10 of an inch at the bottom, and I've become more accustomed through some of my experience in machining to be able to read micrometer. So I'm always thinking in terms of thousandths of an inch, not in terms of millimeters.
16th or whatever.
Yeah.
Or a metric. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't use metric or imperial. I use hundredths, thousandths of an inch. And also because of our CNC experience, you constantly got to do 0.05 or 0.054, whatever those. You're forced to think all the time. You're forced to think in decimal all the time, and it's become more accustomed. I'm more comfortable with that than I ever have been in my life. And when I got to go to millimeters and centimeters, I do that if I need to too. But
about the U.S. adopting it, I mean.
That's
when you're president, you could try to get that to go.
Yeah,
but
I mean there are people that be like say, the metric system, like, don't want no damn American cheese on my sandwich. No, I blew that joke. My friend was behind a guy at Blimpie's once, and he says, or Subway, he goes, what type of cheese do you want in your sandwich? He goes, I want American cheese. I'm American. I want American cheese on my sandwich. So those are the guys that won't adapt to the.
They don't want no liters of gas in their car.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider trying to consolidate your wide knowledge in a book or series? It'd be cool to see your basics expanded into other skills, kind of like an awesome version of the old Time Life books that my dad had, or like.
Yeah.
What's the cool outdoors books? I want to say Firestarter, but that's not.
The Most Dangerous Book for Boys. Did you ever see that?
Yeah.
I love that book. It's one of my favorite books. The Dangerous Book for Boys. It's just all things you can get in trouble with.
So maybe yes is your answer to that, or like yes.
I've been talking with a book publisher to do something, but the couple of books I made in my life, I get royalty checks. I mean, tell you, they're like 80 cents. They really knock your socks off.
You could buy some American cheese.
The most amount of physical work I've ever done, mental work, reading the same book 3,000 times and trying to find anything wrong with it, and then getting a royalty check for 80 cents, it just doesn't pay off. So, I mean, books are not something that I look forward to ever doing again. I know some guys like Mark and David Picciuto, these guys do well with books. I don't like creating.
Has anybody else written a book?
I talked about your book.
Thank you.
I talked about your book today in my podcast.
Okay.
I did. I talked about it making it.
I didn't want to be the redheaded stepchild left out here.
No, but
talking about Spagnolo, but not that Vondriska guy in that stupid live edge slab book.
You've done a couple books.
I've done two.
Yeah. So I talked about your CNC book today because Picciuto had it by his computer side, so we talked about it and showed it. But I had just a horrible experience writing a book. It just was grueling.
It is grueling.
It's grueling, and
without question.
You get like a royalty check for 80 cents, and you go, thanks. Maybe I'll get an egg sandwich.
Okay. And now this is a cool thing that you've only recently started. Tell us about your CNC kits that are for sale a lot of places. I'm aware of the toolbox kit, costs $40.
Yeah.
You also have a birdhouse kit, correct? Others available now, where to buy them, keep up the good work.
Well, we had a conundrum when I put those kits out that I sell on my website. We were selling them on my website, and to promote them on my website over a year ago, I did a little video, and I said to I have a small little team of guys, we discuss marketing, and I said, I can't just assemble a kit. There's not enough of a video. So what I'll do is we'll give the plans away for free, but I'll show how you can lay the plans down and bandsaw them, just much like we did the box. So I made a finger jointed box. I gave it a little bit more of an inventive flair with a drawer underneath it for the video. But I said, if you want to make something like this, you could download the plans, or you can buy my assembly kit. You put it together yourself. I did that video, put it out in like late February, early March. I got a call from Walmart, and they said, would you be willing to sell this kit in our store? I was like, well, I don't have a company. I don't have an infrastructure. I don't have a manufacturer. He's like,
don't have any kits.
Yeah. And if you were willing to go and do the legwork for that, would you be willing to sell it in our store? And so my business partner said, and we discussed, he's like, I'd rather try this and fail than say, I wish we would have tried it and never knew the net results. And it's not doing gangbusters right now, only because it's a weird product. It's in a weird part of the store. It sells in the paint aisle because they're trying to create a DIY aisle. And they're doing a really lackluster attempt at trying to create this DIY aisle. And so we were like one of the first DIY kits in that aisle. So it's selling well on the internet, and it is expensive. I right away said it's too expensive, but we can only get it made for a certain price because of the price of plywood. So we were kind of stuck.
Were you doing that out of Baltic?
We're doing it out of a 7-ply birch that we get in Canada.
And material prices, as you are probably aware, have gone crazy, skyrocket.
Yeah. And because of the cube and because of the size of it, they put it at 40. I think it's way overpriced, personally. Don't tell Walmart I said that. But we are working on taking the inventory we have and trying to figure out how to bring the cost down and sell it in other places.
And so if people want to find this, can they just go to walmart.com and see
Go to Walmart. You can go to jimmysworkshop.com or walmart.com and type in the search bar Jimmy's Workshop. I think one word will bring it right up, and you can see it.
Okay. I'm not sure what this is in reference to. Donald says Stewart's started, this is a sandwich shop. Mm-hmm. Stewart started in Norwalk, Connecticut, and expanded to New York with a store in Yonkers, New York.
Yeah, Stewart's.
History.
It used to be an ice cream shop. Are you looking for the second and third tip?
You missed a question.
Uh-oh.
Oh, geez.
Our executive producer is yelling at us.
Jean-Louis says, if this is the one where you're referencing, the windowsill on our picture window, softwood, I think, hasn't been finished in years. The stain has faded in spots, so it looks almost white. How would you go about restoring the stain to make it a uniform color, since parts of the sill have the original stain and a few places have lost all of the stain?
Yeah, I think, in my professional opinion, I just had to talk to somebody about this who lives near the water, and they had a blotchy teak. They have this really, really beautiful, really expensive house, and they have a blotchy teak on the outside that kind of is in the weather, and they're like, how can we get rid of the blotches? In my professional opinion, the only way to do that is to sand it completely off. And they're like, well, that's so long. It's like the whole length of the house, which is as long as I said. That's the only way you're going to match it. Or if you just pick a line to stand up to, and then from that line that way, it's going to be that color, and from this line this way, it'll be that color. So with your windowsill, you're going to have to sand it completely down to the natural wood as best you can, and then stain the entire thing over it. You're never going to be able to match what's gone and what's there.
Yeah, agree. Sean asks, how come they didn't put Jackman and Pat both on the lathe together? So this is in reference to the Making Fun show.
We shot a lot of the two of them working together on the wooden soldier guy we made, the robot, the crushy robot thing. They worked on either ends of that, and then also when we built the cannon for the pizza cannon car, those guys worked together on that on either end of that. But maybe it just didn't make it into the edit.
Bob says, do wet sharpening systems work well? So that MK2, is that wet or dry?
It's dry. It's dry, and you slow it down so you don't overheat. You got to be careful of your overheat. Water is really for two reasons: to keep the blade cold, and to keep it
get the swarf off. I love that word, swarf.
To keep the stone from filling up with swarf. But I personally like a drier system, because with the wet system, it's typically a stone, and you don't have that mirror flatness. You're counting on a little bit of a, what do you call that? A swell cut? What do you call that cut?
Hollow ground.
A hollow ground. Yeah, I personally like that other system. I will not advocate for anything but that system.
Yeah, and I don't know anything.
Pay me.
I use a work sharp, which is it's a concept very similar to that MK2. It's like a record turntable, if you know what a record is. Well, not everybody does.
It sounds like it's probably the same thing, just a different brand.
Yeah, and that does everything dry and works fine for me. So, which is, again, is not to say wet stinks, but it's just not in my experience.
I used to have a whetstone, and I was always frustrated with it, because all of a sudden the corner is dribbling off, and I pull my chisel out, and the corner goes like this. And it's like that. How did I do that?
You have a special.
Because I didn't see through the water.
Molding chisel now.
Yeah, I didn't see through the water that it was withering away.
What Christopher says, would love to hear more about CNC options for the intermediate or beginner.
I'd say go to Craigslist or Facebook Market and get yourself a cheapie and start to learn on that. And then when you're ready, get a more expensive one. That's what I would say. Or go to a makerspace and learn how to use one at a makerspace. Get some education there. Start figuring out how what you know as far as creating files will interact with a certain machine that you know. I personally make everything on Illustrator, bring it into Vectrix, and then turn it into cut paths. And then I meet somebody else, they never even heard of Illustrator. They use some other.
I do all my design work in VCarve. Every once in a while, design in SketchUp, and then bring that in, which is same concept as Illustrator.
So like I said, we all have a million ways to get to the same results. I know Derek uses VCarve for mostly all of his creations. Derek showed me how to take a bitmap and turn it into, VCarve path in Vectrix.
I love the idea.
Take a photographic image and turn it into a 3D image in Vectrix.
I love the idea of going someplace where you can take a class or get some hands-on time in tire kick. It's part of, I do CNC classes here. There are 5 CNC machines in the corner that represent 4 different brands. And the reason there are 4 different brands is for that reason, that when a lot of times when people come in, they're still early in their stages of CNC, they're shopping. And so Woodcraft, Rockler, Makerspaces, just Google CNC classes. And,
I think it's really important to just go take a class and look it up close, because it is a big investment. And, there are machines out there which are expensive that I know people always regret buying. I'm not going to crap on anybody in particular, but there are machines that are better for that few $1,000 startup than others.
Brad says, for a rookie, for segmenting to make the walls go out on the bowl, do I just make the same segment angles but have longer ones?
That's a good question. I think you'd have to ask Jackman about that.
I've turned a lot of bowls, but maybe 1 or 2 segmented. But
I know Jackman, just because when Jackman and I worked together on the TV show, he designed all the rings that became the marching soldier head, legs, and body, and he had everything drawn up in SketchUp first. So in a program, you can take a 20-inch circle and then cut that segment, and then cut that 20-inch circle into 18 segments, 20, 30, 50 segments, and then pull one piece out, get the measurements on it so you know where to set your saw with your angle thing here. So that's what I would suggest, is draw it in a computer program first. Or here's another way to do it, which I used to do. Just get a big piece of paper and a big compass or a pin and a pencil, and a set of dividers and do it the old-fashioned way, the way they would have drawn it in the 1920s. Just
keep stepping it in, making progressively smaller.
yeah.
Cindy says you should write for Cindy on the poster.
Oh, okay.
But I wouldn't actually do it. Sean says, how excited are you for the 48-inch bandsaw?
Oh,
Is this the one that's got to go in the floor because it's so tall?
Yeah. I am really, really, really excited about that. I am glad when that first popped up on Instagram, everyone sent it to me. Jimmy, you got to save this. You got to save the saw. And apparently somebody had already committed to buying it. But the owner says, if he drops out on me, I'll call you. And I got a call like an hour later. He's like, it's up to you. It's to you. I was like, I'll take it. So I bought it. And when I was talking with Keith said, give me the opportunity to restore this. I said, I couldn't be more happy that you want to do it because I wasn't looking forward to it.
It's amazing.
It's a beautiful saw. It's going to be an incredible creation once Keith is done with it. He's doing an absolutely impeccable job. And I can't wait to get it in my possession. I can't wait to sculpt something huge on it. Like
the 1/8-inch, 10-tooth per inch blade on that saw is going to be so useful.
I'm going to put like a 2-inch wide blade with like a 1-inch.
Dunk, dunk, dunk,
dunk. It's going to sound like a helicopter cutting. That's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to that.
Ron says, can you address about class dates? How long are classes? I'm assuming that's for me here. So depends on the class. Like the CNC class is a 1-day thing. Cabinet making is 2 days. I don't currently have anything over 2 days on the schedule, I don't think, or in the descriptions. So VondriskaWoodworks.com is where that stuff gets listed. If you look at that right now, it's a little scanty because I'm waiting for some on-the-road teaching stuff to flesh out. I'm at Mark Adams in May. There's some other stuff that's still pending. So until my on-the-road schedule is finalized, I can't work backwards and do a schedule for this place. I will say, since we're talking about classes here, June 18th, Meet the Makers here at this shop in Hammond, Wisconsin. So a lot of local makers, Matt Carmona will be here, a lot of other creators.
I might come back.
Basically, and Jimmy might come back, maybe with Derek.
Yeah.
Put that on your calendar. We had about 200 people here for the last one. Demonstrations going all day long is very, very cool. You'll also find information about that on Vondriska Woodworks site. Mm-hmm. Favorite modeling software?
Fusion 360. I can fumble my way through it, and Taylor's really good at it. My partner, she's really good at figuring out shapes and all kinds of things. And the one thing I love about Fusion 360, I guess it's with every software, you can just Google how to do this and go look it up. Lars is a great teacher. Lars Christensen is he's got an amazing catalog of videos on how to use Fusion. And pretty much anytime you Google how to do this, how to do that, Lars's videos pop up to the top. And he's great. And he's got a great speaking voice. It's fun to listen to Lars while you're learning how to use Fusion.
Are there any ice pick modifications that you have in mind and have yet to incorporate?
Yeah, there's one I want to do. I have it slated for video. I want it to be the survival. It's going to be the survival pick. And the back's going to unscrew, and there's going to be a 1-strike match in there. A strike on
that's a cool idea.
A 1-strike anywhere match. And it's going to be kind of a joke.
What about, could you do a ferro rod? You could.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so you could make Spock.
So the idea is to just have like a cavity in there. Just use that empty cavity. I've done the magnets, and I've done the ones with the spirit level in them, and I still have to do more of those. It's just a matter of timing, because I do most of that work alone on the lathe, and then I put it in the Tormach and pocket out the window, and then I got to assemble it all by hand.
Chet says the Live Edge book is very helpful. So that's what the book of mine we were just talking about on Live Edge Labs. Thank you, sir. It was a lot of work to write, but I enjoyed it, and I'm very proud of the fact that I did all the photography myself. That's my proudest part of that book. I'm very proud of the photos.
The best thing about finishing a book is like, look what I did. Like a very proud moment.
My oh poop moment, which isn't quite what I said, is the publisher said 144-page book. So each chapter just kind of happened to come out about 20 photos per chapter. I'm writing all of this in Word, and I have zero clue how all of this stuff in Word translates into a printed book. Because there's a table of contents, and there's a bio, and there's all this other ancillary stuff. So I submit all that. They lay the whole thing out, and they came back and said, and I'm like, the day I pushed the send button on the last chapter,
done.
it was like, whoosh, whoosh, done. Bring on the gin and tonic, baby.
They said we need another 100 pages.
You are 16 pages short. I'm like, okay, so you're printing a 128-page book. It's like, no, because it's already on, it was on Amazon for pre-sale already as a 144-page live edge slab book. So I had like 3 weeks to kick out 16 more pages, and the editor who worked with me on it was an amazing help with that. But it was like, are you kidding me?
Stretch.
Yeah. I said, you know, the readership is all going to be like me. They're 61-year-old people. Make the font bigger, and everybody will appreciate that. It's
People laugh at me when they look at my phone. They're like, I can read your phone from across the room.
regarding CNC, Cleston makes a good point, which is download VCarve Pro or desktop trial version.
I was going to suggest
And
that.
then you can mess with the software before you ever get the CNC.
Yeah, both of those softwares, you can pretty much design anything you need. So if you get adept at using that software to create what you want, you can go right into the cut paths. I'm just more comfortable using Illustrator because I've been using it for so long. And I can just export it and it comes right into that program.
Brian says, vintage tools in good shape over newer tools, question mark?
Yes.
Is there virtue to something older and tougher over something more slick? Well, can I advocate the older and tougher and something more slick? Because I'm older.
Yeah, no, older and tougher. I'm older and tougher too. There's nothing
All right, so
about me.
So vintage, you would prefer, you jumped right in on that. So.
I prefer old and vintage only because it's, I like old and vintage because it has texture and a history and a soul to it personally. But, you know, when I see a sexy, beautiful helical head planer, I'm like, I could probably go for one
Or
of
the
those.
drum sander you got pretty excited about this week.
The drum sander, yep. I'm like looking at that drum sander, picturing it in like old
Cast
housings
iron,
and castings, yeah. You know, I just like the old cast iron mostly. That to say I have a brand new saw stop. You know, I get offered these crazy old, you know, Fay and Egan saws and stuff. I'm just like, I don't know, they're too dangerous. I don't want to end up like Johnny Cash's brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Walk the line.
I like modern stuff where necessary. I love my big old band saws, but you know, using George's beautiful brand new Laguna or modern Laguna is nice too. The thing, you could stand probably a dime on its edge on that thing. And
One of the things I think is interesting, and I've read this, but I don't know this for a fact personally, but maybe you do, is that there's a lot of three-phase heavy cast iron available that ends up languishing in the market because, like, I don't have three-phase power. This is a pretty good-sized commercial shop with a lot of 220-volt stuff. I don't have three-phase power.
Yeah.
But you can pretty inexpensively get these VFD devices.
Yeah, VFD is one way of going. And then also American Rotary is a great company. They sell basically like this refrigerator, a small refrigerator-sized box. It's fairly pricey, but what you get for it is you get three-phase power plugged into a 50 amp plug. So if you have 50 amp 220, like a washing machine plug,
It'll convert.
it'll convert right away. You just literally take it off of the pallet and you're ready to go. You can plug it right in, you're ready to go. And you could plug in any three-phase equipment into it. So we have in my shop what I call three-phase alley. We have the American Rotary machine on the floor. And if I need the three-phase dual bandsaw, I just plug that in. If I need the three-phase Bridgeport milling machine, I plug that in. And I'm usually only ever using these machines for whatever task that week I'm doing. It's never, I have to, not tripping over cords. And I have a big giant three-phase American Woodworking Tools bandsaw, and I have a sander, and I have another big buffer. So I got about 6 three-phase tools that I use intermittently with that machine. And these three-phase tools are so inexpensive because you're not competing against anybody who wants them.
So I think it is in the new versus old tool.
Some of them are free. I mean, you'll go to an auction and they'll sell for $100 because nobody wants them.
It's just a good thing to keep in mind that you could conceivably get a lot of tool for the dough if you're willing to go and adapt, to the three-phase.
I said a long time ago, I want machines that I can't stall no matter what. I mean, it's obviously dangerous for the person who's not safe with the machine, but I want a machine. I want to be able to lean on the buffing wheel and the thing just never groan. I want to be able to like get jammed up in the bandsaw and it just work right through whatever a knot or a binding. So that was my goal. I don't want a machine to ever stall on me again.
Nat asks, will you be traveling around the country for any kind of shows? You're leaving the country shortly.
I'm
You're
going to Maker
the
Central.
UK, right?
So if anybody out there is,
We do get a lot of international
if
watchers.
anybody out there is in Birmingham, I'm going to be in Birmingham, not this weekend, but the following weekend at Maker Central. We're doing a couple of stage Q&As and interviews. I'm going to be hanging out with Jocko, whatever, from Europe. Jocko's going to be there. Me and Jocko are going to do a conversation on product development. I'm going to do a bandsaw demo in one of the 3 stage times and an interview. So those 3 things I'll be doing next, not this weekend, but the following weekend in Birmingham, England, Maker Central.
And then once you're back, anything on the docket at this point for summer or fall?
Nothing, just June. Just June, Meet the Makers somewhere in Hammond, Wisconsin.
Godforsaken Hammond, Wisconsin. And I mean that in the nicest way.
Right now, yeah.
So for me, Mark Adams School, cabinet making, 5-day cabinet making class that starts May 23rd. I don't know if it's currently sold out or not. The last time I was there, the class was sold out. And then I'll be at IWF. Do you go to the IWF in Atlanta show? I don't think you normally do.
I don't, but now that I'm working with Type Bond, now I'm a Type Bond sponsor. I told them I would if they needed me to go.
So I'll be there. I typically walk the show, and we might take a video crew there this year as well. And then now maybe Jimmy will be there. And then
Maybe.
I think those are my next 2 travel things.
As of now, the Making It TV show season 4 hasn't been ordered, so I don't think I'm doing that. I haven't heard a thing. And Making Fun season 2 hasn't been ordered, so I don't know if I'm going to be doing that either. At least not this summer. I don't know. I might have the whole summer to just hang out and do nothing.
We have a thank you for sharing knowledge, and thanks to Tight Bond for sponsoring, which I was negligent in
Thank you.
mentioning that Tight Bond always underwrites the live streams, which keeps it free for you. So big thank you to Tight Bond for that. Cindy says, good information. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Cindy.
Both of you are much help and inspiration, which is cool.
Thank you.
And then this, I think, will be our last pregunta, our last question. Jean-Louis says, how do you spell the 3-phase conversion piece of electronics you just mentioned?
American Rotary. American, like AMERICAN, and however you would spell rotary.
ROTARY. American Rotary.
I think they might be a Wisconsin company, in fact.
Oh.
Maybe our producer could figure that one out.
So I'm going to hit, while she's doing that, I'm going to hit the sweepstakes one more time.
Oh, yeah.
So again, WWGOA is giving away 2 prizes, DiResta branded stuff, not his glasses, but one is poster, not my ice pick, this ice pick, and this knife. And then we're duplicating that a second time with another giveaway.
By the way, one of these knives is, and I can interest you in, they're both the knives. Never mind. I thought one was the razor blade. I thought I saw. So, never mind.
I think they're both this style knife, right?
Yeah, I'll stay out of it.
Yeah. So,
Wisconsin? American Rotary's here in Wisconsin.
Just scroll down a little bit. You'll see the sweepstakes information. It's not ending tonight. We're not announcing a winner tonight.
Okay.
It goes for another, I don't know, a week or a little bit yet beyond today. But if you win, you will certainly be informed. So sign up for that. And yeah, that's our last question, so we can bug out.
That's it. Well, thanks, George. Thanks for
All right.
the week, man.
And sorry we were running late, but we
Thank you,
extended a
everybody.
little at the end to make up. And yeah, thanks so much he's been here all week. I'm sure it felt like a month, but Jimmy landed on Sunday and we got lots and lots of video content this week.
good
So
stuff.
watch for that on the website.
Thank
All right, Katie, take us out.
Thank you to our executive producer.